Happy Friday. Welcome back to class. So before we get started, a little bit of review. Think to yourself, what is an organelle? What is that definition? Now, what does a chloroplast do? Which types of cells have chloroplasts? So did you say it's chloroplast turns sunlight into food? Nice job. And mostly when we say chloroplast, we think of plants, but there are some protists that have chloroplasts as well. Today we're going to focus all on chloroplasts and the process of turning sunlight into food. And you may have heard it before, it is photosynthesis.
In 1779, a scientist observed that in the presence of light, plants give off bubbles from their green parts, while, in the shade, the bubbles eventually stop. He identified the gas as oxygen. He also observed that, in the dark, plants give off carbon dioxide. This man was Jan Ingenhousz, and this is how he became the first man to discover the process of photosynthesis. You may already know that photos is the Greek word meaning light, and synthesis is another Greek word meaning putting together. However, what is photosynthesis and why is it important?
Photosynthesis. Trees, plants, algae, and phytoplankton all do it. And yes, it's a crazy complicated process, but we should probably give it our consideration because it's basically the process that powers most of the living world. If you boil it down, photosynthesis starts with a simple recipe. Take a little carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, add some water and sunlight, throw in some essential nutrients, and within a plant cell, this little kitchen, known as the chloroplast, can cook up some serious sugar, or in other words, food. It uses this food to grow and reproduce and basically live, and what it doesn't use up, it stores for later. And let's not forget that during this whole process, oxygen is produced as a byproduct. And why should we care? Well, oxygen is nice to breathe clearly, but take a step back and consider that the plant isn't just making food for itself. The sugars it produces are not only used by the plant, but also whatever eats the plant, and then whatever eats the eater, and up and then back down the food chain until you get, well, dirt. So when you think about it, whether you eat plants or not, that little green guy is using the sun to feed the world.
We're going to take a journey into the leaf of a redwood tree. So let's go in, zooming in. And these leaves are measured on a centimeter scale. So through this animation, we're going to gradually zoom into the smaller and smaller scales. So again, first starting at the centimeter and then zooming in. So as we get closer, we're going to approach something called a stoma. Now we're on the millimeter scale. This is the opening to inside the leaf. And as we enter the interior of the leaf, we're going to see a lot of different individual cells. These cells are where photosynthesis actually takes place. They're translucent, like they're clear, which allows sunlight to enter each of these cells. As we enter a single cell, we'll zoom down to the micrometer scale. The shapes inside the cell are organelles, right? So we've learned about this. So we're going to eventually make our way towards one of the most important organelles that we're talking about today, which is called a chloroplast. We just entered the chloroplast. You'll see flat pancake-like structures, and these are called thylakoids. This is actually where the light part of photosynthesis happens. So sunlight comes in and hits these structures inside of a chloroplast, and as you can see, these are getting agitated, excited almost. Now in this case, the time scale has changed. The molecules are shown moving 1 million times slower than in real life. The green and blue bush-like structures are the photosystems. They're clusters of proteins that actually absorb the light energy from the sun and help it transform it into energy that the cell can use. Pretty cool process that goes inside of a chloroplast.
Today we are going to talk about an incredible process that uses light, carbon dioxide, and water to make something awesome that we all love: sugar. Unfortunately, we cannot do this amazing, incredible process, which is known as photosynthesis. Some types of protists can do photosynthesis. Some types of bacteria can. And of course, plants can. Plants will be our focus for this video clip. Animals and amoebas just sort of missed out on this ability. But we do benefit from it greatly, as this process also produces oxygen, the very gas that we need in order to breathe. So this process is important for us to understand. First, a little background. Plants and animals need sugar, specifically glucose. Plants, as well as animals, use glucose to make ATP energy in a process known as cellular respiration. ATP energy is critical for cells to be able to carry out their cellular activities. But while we have to be in search of food to get glucose, plants instead can do photosynthesis to make their own glucose. So that's kind of nice because they don't have to go anywhere to get it. Plants have adaptations to make them able to carry out photosynthesis in a variety of environments. Here is the formula for photosynthesis. On the left side of the formula, you will find the reactants. That means these are the inputs. The plant has to have these in order to do photosynthesis. On the right side of the formula, you will see the products. That means those are the items that are produced by the plant, the outputs. Now, sometimes the formula is written a little differently. Technically, it needs to be balanced, and sometimes light is written on top of the arrow just to show that it's in the presence of light, so it may instead look like this. The C6H12O6, that product, it's a sugar, specifically glucose. Now, photosynthesis, it's not just a formula. Have you ever tried to capture light before? It's hard. Plants have light-capturing molecules called pigments that help them do this. See, visible light, it has different wavelengths. Different wavelengths of light have different colors. If you have ever played with a prism before, you may have been able to see how light can be divided up into a rainbow of colors due to these different wavelengths. Well, one pigment that plants use for photosynthesis is called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is an expert at absorbing red and blue light, but not so much green light. Because it does not absorb very much green light, it actually reflects green light. Therefore, many plants appear green to our eyes. There are more pigments besides chlorophyll that work with different wavelengths of light, and this can explain why green is not the only color that you see in plants. Chlorophyll is a pigment found in the chloroplast of plant cells. Convenient, they sound similar. This amazing organelle is not found in animal cells.
So to summarize, let's take a look at the plant. You can see from below, water is being taken up from the roots, and the plant combines water and carbon dioxide to form sugar. The carbon dioxide enters the plant through the stomata, and then what happens is if you zoom in to the chlorophyll, you can see that carbon dioxide is going in and oxygen is coming out. Now that happens because of sunlight. Sunlight is the energy that's running the whole process of photosynthesis. So now it's time for some notes. So go ahead and pause the video so you can grab your notebook. Ideally, you want to write the notes right under where your last notes were. So what is photosynthesis? Photo means light, and synthesis means put together. Photosynthesis is a process where plants use light energy to make food. So make sure you write the equation and draw the diagram below. So the equation starts with carbon dioxide, CO2, plus H2O, water, plus energy in the form of light energy. And the arrow means it makes or turns into, And that makes sugar, which is C6H12O6, and oxygen, O2. So make sure you have time to write all these notes. Again, pause the video if you need a little more time, and we'll move on to the next thing.
Light gives plants the energy they need to grow. But what happens if plants receive too much light? The answer is they glow. This neon glow is actually happening around us all the time. The result of a cellular process where light from the sun is transformed and released as fluorescent light. A journey into the plant cell reveals how it works. This is a chloroplast, the energy-producing organ found inside the cells of plants. When sunlight strikes a plant, disc-like structures within the chloroplast absorb the light and convert it into energy. However, a small fraction of this light, about 1%, is emitted as fluorescent light. The light exits the plant cell and is released into the atmosphere. The amount of light released can vary depending on factors like the time of day, time of year, and how much sunlight is being absorbed.
Humans can't see this light. Our eyes just aren't that sensitive. To see the fluorescent light that's emitted from plants all over the world, we have to use scientific instruments that are placed on satellites.
Earth observation satellites, outfitted with special sensors, are able to detect this light from space. After multiple orbits, scientists can construct a detailed view of the data. This is what plant fluorescence looks like on a global scale. The visualization was created from 5 years of satellite measurements, analyzed by a team of researchers led by scientists at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Each point of light on this globe represents fluorescent light exiting a plant cell. The greater the intensity of light, the brighter the color. By observing changes in intensity over time, scientists can distinguish stressed, dead, or dormant plants from healthy and growing vegetation.
Fluorescence measurements like these are important because they can be used to develop improved vegetation models. And this will lead to better predictions of how plants will interact with the Earth's environment in a changing climate.
So now it's time to collect some data based on your experiments. So you should be doing this every day, and you should be recording your data in data tables that look like this. For the plants, again, I'm measuring every other day how tall they are once they sprouted. For my feeders, I'm measuring my observations and also how much each feeder has gone down each week. I'm writing notes and taking photos of my yeast. I am baking. If I'm at that stage, if you're at that stage, you can start baking and measuring that. Or you can be putting your data into a data table, collecting data that way. So spend some time getting organized and make sure you're on track with your experiments. Time that you're finished with all of your data for your experiment, check out the optional assignment for today. It's photosynthesis experiments. Go back onto Gizmos and log on And you'll actually do some experiments changing the light intensity and the carbon dioxide level and see what happens to the plant. Does it make more oxygen, less oxygen? What happens? So give it a try, and a reminder that you can always do an optional assignment from previous weeks. They don't have any due date except for the end of the term. Have fun.